Hello and welcome to another edition of Cadence Fishing TV. You join us today at Hayfield Lakes. We're on Adams Lake and we're doing a spot of pellet waggler fishing. Hopefully we'll be catching some more hard fighting Hayfield carp like this one. So when's the right time to fish a pellet waggler? Well, when you get to your peg, unless the wind's right for it, it's a real non-starter. Don't do it. There's other things to do that will catch you more fish. Ideally, you want the wind off your back or very slight, and a crosswind possibly. But if it's too strong, your float will start to get dragged about and you won't be able to present the bait properly. So you'd probably be better fishing a pole or a feeder on them occasions. But when the wind's right, there's no better way of catching carp in the summer, nice and shallow. It's fantastic. I've got like that. Really came to order, didn't it? It's important to keep the bait going in all the time. It's about 12 foot deep where I'm fishing today, but by constantly feeding 3 or 4 pellets, the fish have come where they really want to be. We've just broken into summer proper. And the upper layers of the water are just nice for them to live in. So a lot of the time they really don't venture down into the colder water at the bottom. They like it nice and warm at the top, and they'll just cruise around. Large amounts of them, and that's really the time to target carp on a pellet waggler. These carp at Hayfield, they've seen it all before. They've been fished for day in, day out really, and you've really got to out-cute them. Now, a few years ago, you could get away with fishing almost a chair leg as a waggler, you know, something really thick and heavy, and it go in with a great big splash. And they actually design wagglers to make maximum noise. Well, I think those days have seen, you know, that's finished, I think. And I think you've got to out-cute them now with smaller and smaller floats, the smallest you can get away with to actually get good presentation and at a reasonable distance. It's developed, you know, the game has changed. This waggler I'm fishing with today, it's 3 gram. And I think anything much bigger than that, and I'm not sure we'd be catching too many. But without doubt, the best bait, in my opinion anyway, for waggler fishing in general for carp, are pellets. Why? Well, they make the nice noise when they go in, and these carp are fed daily with pellets, so it makes sense to use them really. pretty standard really for these Hayfield fish. They're a really good stamp. If you catch one under £4, you've been unlucky. The sort of average between £5 and £8 with plenty around double figures. You'd be unlucky to catch 10 carp and not get one that was £8 to £10, you know. So it's a very, very good venue for that kind of stamp of fish if that's what you fancy doing. So there are other baits you could fish a waggler with for carp, maggots being one, casters, corn for example. But for a noise point of view, pellets the bait really. To get the best out of a pellet waggler, you've got to be busy. Busy with a catapult and repetitive casting. It's no good just sitting and waiting. Although this particular venue, I've noticed in the last few weeks that casting a float on top of feeding fish and expecting a bite as soon as the float hits the water, it don't seem to happen too much here. Other venues I've been to, like Messingham Sands for instance, that's how you catch them. You feed, you cast, there's an instant bite and away you go. On these venues it don't seem to happen too much like that. So what I've found best is to feed short, cast long, and then feed again and come back, twitch just one turn at a time back over the baited area, and when the float sneaks its way back into the feeding fish, often you'll get a bite and you're away. It's much more productive on this particular venue than actually casting to a group of fish. Now the name of the game with pellet waggler fishing is to try and get fish competing, kind of pushing each other out of the way to get a minimal amount of bait introduced to your peg very, very often. These carp, they've seen it all, as I've said earlier. They've seen it all before, so what you've got to do is constantly have a group of pellets falling through the water and make these carp compete, make them make a mistake, because if you only feed once a minute, they'll pretty much pick your hook bait out and you won't get too many bites. So you've really got to feed minimal amounts of bait constantly and get them to sort of chase each other off a little bit, and then they will make a mistake and have your hook bait, and it'll help you catch lots of fish. So you've got to be busy. You've got to be busy both casting, but more importantly feeding. You must keep your catapult in your hand and feed just 3 or 4 pellets constantly like that through the water in the same place, just constantly feeding. There's one. And when you hook a carp, it's a good idea to keep the rod nice and low. These fish are good fish, you don't have to race. Let the rod do its work. So imagine the rod as a spring. If I point the rod at the fish, it stops doing its job. So allow the rod to compress. And each lunge of the carp is soaked up by the progressive action of the rod. This particular rod is the CR10 11 foot. It's a fantastic rod for this type of fishing. It just soaks up all these lunges. I'm fishing an 18 today, an 18 LWG. Oops, which is up. I've lost that one. Bloody hell, look at that. I've just scooped about a million fry. It's not quite the carp, not quite the carp I was playing, but every egg a bird. You can't win them all. Sometimes they come off, just crack on. There's plenty more to catch. So there you go, next cast in, we're in again. This is what I'm saying, a constant feed. If you feel the fish is under control, nice and calm, sometimes you can just grip the rod. It's amazing how little the fish will do sometimes, while you just feed a few more pellets and just keep the peg ticking over. Keep them feeding fish active over your bait. Keep the rod nice and low. This fish is kited right down the bank, looking for snags. I expect it's a good fish. You got to be real careful with them here. Often they'll get tiled up underneath your nets and things like that, or underneath your pallets. I've seen lots of carp lost underneath pallets. Now you could use your clutch on these reels. I tend not to. It's just an old habit. I have my clutch wound right up and prefer to back wind. But I know a lot of people prefer to use the clutch. Each to their own. It's your own preference. They don't give up, these fish. They're absolutely phenomenal. So fit. Well, I think we've nearly got it now. Beautiful. Really enjoyed that. The soft action on this rod really helps to cushion all those lunges. I mean, this is a tiny hook and I'm fishing an 0.14 hook length. If this was a stiffer rod, I'm sure you'd get bust up quite a lot, but these nice soft progressive action rods, they just soak it all up and make it as easy as it gets, really. It's a lovely carp, that. It's about £6–7, I would have said, £6 probably. Nice fish, pretty typical of Hayfield. So a couple of things to consider when you start out with your day's fishing. So you could really maximise the distance that you fire your pellets. You know, you could stretch your catapult to its limit and decide to fish there. But what if the wind gets up? All of a sudden you can't reach. You've got to sort of begin again. So the thing to do is fish well within your catapult's range. Weather changes and you can be left a little bit lacking if you absolutely start at your maximum distance. It gives you somewhere to go, and it also gives the fish somewhere to go as well. You know, you'll have a greater chance of building your peg and making it a fantastic day out. I mean, today the wind's off our backs, so it's a doddle really to get sort of 6 or 7 rod lengths out, that kind of area. I can go further if I wish, or I could drop a few short. I've also got 2 sizes of pellets. I've got some 6mm and some 8mm, and every now and again I'll just flare a few 8s, which will naturally go longer because they're heavier, so they'll go longer. And if I really want to, I can break 2 lines out and it's no effort really. But if I maximise the distance I feed my 6s, I've lost that option, so it's something worth bearing in mind. While you're fishing this pellet waggler long, it's also worthwhile just dripping in a few pellets, and I'll show you why. I can't guarantee it, but I'll have a pound with you that sometime during the day you'll get one for nothing, just by simply flicking a few pellets. Just by simply flicking a few pellets there, I guarantee you, I shouldn't have done that, I'll have a pound with you that you'll get one. It'll pull the rod off the rest, and it'll be an absolute freebie, and quite often they're the biggest fish. Oh, there's a little tip for you. These are fantastic fish, these. It's my favourite way of fishing. I love it. Whoa! There he goes, look, it's going for my pellet. Oh, it's a good fish. It looks like a ghost carp. There it goes, look. Superb. I don't know if you can pick it out, but the action of this rod is absolutely perfect. Here we go. No, not this time. I've got him. Wow. I love catching these ghost carp. Stunning. I had quite a tricky start to the session really. I think we must have fished, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes before we started catching. And in that 40 minutes, I'd fished a 16 Guru LWG, which is quite a fine hook. But with these soft rods, you can get away with it. So, as I said, we fished for 40 minutes and caught nothing. But there was obviously fish feeding. So, I took the 16 off and put an 18 on, same pattern, LWG 18. And instantly got more bites and away we went. We've started catching now. If the fish gain confidence, I might be tempted to put the 16 back on, but I ain't lost, well, I've only lost one fish I think on this 18, so I'm going to stick with it for now. Beautiful. Keep feeding. Feed. One turn of the reel, look. Feed again. Just 3 and 4 pellets at a time. There we go, there's the fish there now, look, swirling on the bait. 3 pellets at a time. Try and group them as much as you can. I mean, it's not always easy. But the tighter you get them, the more they'll push each other away, chase each other off, make a mistake. There we go. So with this 11 foot rod, which is as I've said, a really beautiful soft rod, it was a good idea to match it up with a 3000 size reel. It's a tiny reel really, but it's absolutely wonderful, very strong. I think the body is actually aluminium, so there's no graphite as such, nothing that's going to bend or flex a lot of these reels, they call it graphite. Really, it's just a plastic composite, really, a lot of the time, and it flexes as you actually pulling and cranking a fish back. Another ghost carp, look. So the reel kind of flexes. Well, these don't. They're absolutely brilliant. They're very, very strong. It's a Cadence CS7. I haven't used them long, but I'm very pleased with what I've seen so far with them. Very good. Nice line lay and very strong. Here's a tip for you. I remember once in a team match trying to transfer a carp by hand into a keep net. Missed the net. Away it went. So always transfer your carp by landing net into your keep net. So I always find it amazing. I always find it amazing how little bait you actually need to feed to catch a big weight of carp. These fish are eating animals, really. They're absolute pigs at times. But if I was to fill my pouch now and give them a really good dollop, I'd stop catching. It's always a temptation to feed more bait to catch more fish. Quite often it's the opposite, really. Feed less bait to catch more fish, especially these carp. Very strange, but once you get your head around the fact, you'll catch more carp. So nice and steady with the bait, just 3 or 4 pellets. Constantly feeding 3 or 4 pellets is the key. Now when there's a lot of carp in your peg like there is today, foul looking is an occasional occurrence. It's not ideal, but if you do foul up one, just take your time, keep the rod nice and low, and occasionally you'll be lucky enough to get them in, but mainly they'll come off. I've made a few mistakes with this fish. A, I've foul hooked it, and B, I've had 2 lunges now with a landing net and missed. But this rod has forgiven me both times. Look at that, it's an absolute dream. I'm going to have one more go. It's gone. Alright, so terminal tackle. What do you need to fish a nice pellet waggler match or a day out? Well, you need a variety of floats for different applications. Sometimes the fish will be very shallow and cruising, and on that occasion you'll probably want something short and stumpy. This is a 2 gram mugger, and basically the use for this float is to sort of search out individual fish or groups of fish and cast to them very, very shallow, like maybe only a foot deep. And these floats, they drop in the water with complete silence, really. They just go in, sit straight away, and off you go. You know, you catch fish very, very shallow and quickly with this type of float. But it has its limitations, as in distance, and also if it's windy and you've got a ripple on the water, the float won't sit right. It'll get pulled away with skim and stuff like that. And on that occasion, you'll probably need something slightly longer, such as this. It's a slightly bigger version. It only takes 1 gram more, but it's longer. So the one I've selected today for the distance that we've fished is a 4 gram. I fished a 3 gram earlier and I changed it to a 4 because the fish moved out slightly. So this variety is 6 mil diameter, slightly longer. The cast very, very straight, and they sit very neatly in the water. They come straight up, and I find them fantastic. So if the fish move out and more distance but stay shallow, very shallow, I'd fish a fatter float like this one. This particular one's 8 gram, and they're fantastic for casting very long distances and fishing very shallow. It's like a bit of a stumpy waggler, that one. And again, if I had to get the same distance but there was a good wind on it and a lot of ripple, this 8 gram version just gets underneath the skim, holds the float still, and it won't get pulled away by any skim or ripple. It'll just sit nice and still and give you time to find a fish. So you need a good selection of wagglers. Drennan makes some nice one. Preston, they all make good floats. What I find important is a clip swivel with a round clip, so the waggler, can sit in that bend. It sits nice and neat, and when you're casting, it won't sort of bite into a corner of the clip. If the diamond shaped, the float kind of won't sit. So look for a clip with a round bottom. I'll show you the ones I use now. Up until very recently, I used the Preston ones, which I found were very good. But recently, I've come across these new Drennan ones, and I found them even better. Really, the rubber beads here are soft, but they attach to the line very much stronger than the Preston ones do. So you don't have so much movement in your float. You don't have to reset your float once you've landed one, or they are absolutely brilliant. So give them a looking at. Yeah, you'll notice that all the pellet wagglers that I've made and I use, they're all loaded. I find it much kinder to the line, and there's no need for shots now. Always best to use a loaded pellet waggler. Now, going on to hooks, this particular venue, there aren't many snags to talk of, so you can fine down. You can really get nice and, a bit of finesse into it. And I've found that this particular venue really suits an LWG, Guru LWG. It's a really beautiful hook, very fine wire but incredibly strong, and the pellet sits nicely on it as well. So I'm a big fan of the Guru LWG. This particular one's an 18. If you can get away with it and the fish will accept it, you can fish a 16. More to the good, really. It gives you a bit more hook hold, but they're incredibly strong for the gauge of wire. Moving on to hook length, my personal choice, there are many, my personal choice is the Silstar. I've used it for years and it's always been a good line for me. One thing I will say, when you're going to use or tie hooks, I tie mine on the bank, that's how I am, but when you pull the line off the spool, it comes off slightly with a bit of a memory for a curl. So just wet your fingers and run the line through your fingers like that, and what it'll do, it'll straighten it out and make it tie properly. So there's a little tip for you there. Just take that memory out the line just by stretching it and running a wet finger across it like that. So there we are. Catapults, pellet waggler fishing, you will go through lots of catapults, so don't turn up with just one. You need at least 3 to get through a proper day. You'll snap the elastics, the pouches will let you down sometimes. Drennan make a pretty good one. You can get the parts cheap as chips, so treat yourself to some of them. Well, today I'm using a CS7 Cadence reel. It's the second time I've used it. It's absolutely fantastic, made of aluminium, very light, very strong, and I've loaded that today with a 3-pound Maxima. I've tried lots of others and I've gone back to Maxima. It's absolutely brilliant. Well, I'm gonna make that my last fish of the day. Well, what a fabulous day that's been, catching carp on a pellet waggler. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you have too. Thanks for watching.